How to get into programming. Yesterday I was talking with a friend of mine from school who went his own way and he didn't pursue development or programming, anything like that. He's into business and lately he's having a lot of time on his hand and he wanted to explore programming or enter the world of development, and we're just talking about how to get into it or how to you even start. So at first, let me tell you how I got started. My approach was finish schooling, enter high school with PCM, physics, chemistry, math in 11 and in 12, and then for my bachelor's I took engineering course, which is a 4-year long course where they taught the basics of programming. And after finishing my engineering, I did some internships and got a job where I learned how to program. And during internship I learned about how programming is done in an industry, and I worked for those companies for few years, and after that I started to find my own clients and started working as a freelancer or as a contractor. And if you know basic mathematics, if you understand English, then I think you doesn't matter which background you are from, you can still get into programming. If you have some funds lying around and if you can take a boot camp, a paid boot camp nearby you, that would be, I think, the simplest and most straightforward option, where they will guide you through all your steps, through all the steps to get into programming. Boot camps are more common in abroad, and I think it's less common over here, but there are online boot camps from different sites where you can learn, where they will take your hand and guide you through every little step. And there are free code camps such as freecodecamp.org, which is like a boot camp where you take courses and learn the basics of programming and development based on your interest. And the first thing that I would like to ask anyone who wants to get into programming or into development is, what is your interest? Or simply follow your interest, because this industry or this area is very, very broad. Just to name a few, there is web development, which has front end and back end. Then there is mobile development, in which there is Android and iOS, and then there is hybrid application development tools or technologies. Then you have DevOps, server management or server-side management of applications and scaling. And you have analytics, you have big data, you have ETL processes in big data, you have UI UX design and development side, you have research side as well for user behaviors, conversion patterns, and there is project management itself, there is bashing, scripting, a lot of things really. There is hardware programming. There are so many things that you can enter. So what's your real interest? Do you want to make an app and be rich very quickly, or do you want to learn some hardware programming and make some bots for your own fun? And or do you want to make your own website or make a website for your company or things like that? So there are a ton of use cases, ton of implementations, ton of areas where you can enter and explore really. So I would first encourage you to really find answer to that question. What do you want to do with, once you have that particular skill, what do you want to solve? Because you can start a Python course or a JavaScript course or a Golang course or a mobile development course. You can make an app, but you should know in the first place that what do you want to do with the knowledge? Which area do you see yourself doing things, building stuff or solving problems? That is what I would recommend first. Say you just want to learn programming. So let's say you want to learn programming and make some applications. Since I'm a JavaScript developer, I will be recommending you JavaScript. It will help you make applications for the web, mainly front end, but you can use the same knowledge and transition it into back end. And if you fancy mobile development, you can use the same knowledge of JavaScript and and can make mobile applications using technology stack like React Native. So JavaScript is what I would be recommending for people who are starting it out, so that it can help you enter any platform really. But that does not mean that is a silver bullet or that is the ultimate solution, because say you learn mobile development using JavaScript and React Native, but there might be companies who will only hire you for mobile development if you know Android or iOS. So that is a case that might happen. But there are of course some companies that do hire developers who know React Native. Another thing is, no matter which language you choose, there would be few things that is common across the board. Say things such as data structure. Your Within data structure you have your strings, your numbers, your booleans, your arrays and objects, and I think most of those data structures are common or can be created across many different languages. Now I don't have many languages under my belt. I know a little bit about C, C++, Java, Kotlin, Swift, just a little bit, but my main language is JavaScript. And a lot of these things are common. The data structure is common. Data structure is something that you use to store your data in your application. And the next thing is control flow. Your statements, your if else statements, your switch statements, your loops, that helps you to determine how your application or how your program should proceed based on certain conditions. If you meet certain condition, you do something else, you do something else. That is called control flow. So you have your data structures, you have your control flow, that is common, usually common across many different languages. The way you write those syntaxes might be different, but you do have data structures, you do have control flows. You do need to understand a little bit about some commonly used algorithms, some searching algorithms, some sorting algorithms. And again, algorithms are just steps steps you take in order to solve a certain kind of problem. Say you have 10 names of your friends kept in a data structure called array, and now you want to sort them alphabetically, because having those names alphabetically makes sense. So how would you solve that? You would need to define an algorithm or use an algorithm that is already defined to sort those names within that data structure, right? So if you know sorting algorithms, then you, no matter which language you choose, you can always do that. And sometimes some languages already offer those some of the most commonly used algorithms built into their language. You can use array.sort or some sort of a built-in methods in some languages, and you can solve them. Otherwise you will still, if you know the algorithm, you can write your own to solve those kind of things. Then you have your solid principles. Then you have your concept of OOPS, object-oriented programming style. Is that it? Things like that. That should kick you on a path of learning more about programming and just exploring different fields. So if you still want to pursue programming, then I would suggest you to just explore, learn the basics first, focus on the basics without being distracted. And once you gain a pretty good understanding of data structures, control flow, some basic algorithms, solid principles, concept of OOPS or functional programming if you are into JavaScript. Once you know those basics, you can then really start solving some problems. And once you start solving some of the basic problems, writing your own algorithms, solving simple things, you get a hang of it, and then slowly you can use those problem solving skills to build bigger applications in that particular language. And slowly you might want to have an interface. Then you enter into the UI UX state or stage, and you might want to learn about HTML and CSS, how to build a user interface and how to define the user interactions. Everything I think is, in my experience so far, is a need basis kind of a thing. If I want to solve a problem and I don't seem to find a way using my current skill set, I go on to internet and just search how do I solve this particular problem? And there is always someone who will tell you there is a particular style to solve this kind of problem, there is a library, or there is a predefined function, or there is an algorithm, or there is a piece of code that can solve this kind of scenario. And based on that, I just add it to my arsenal of knowledge and use it time and again. And that's how I think you can get into programming, learn the basics, slowly solve problems, and build applications as you need. And sometimes you may not even want to build the application that needs to have an interface. For example, I commonly need to manage a lot of files in my system. So what I typically do is I write scripts to sort my downloads folder, where I have, say, text files, images, PDFs, videos or audios that I have downloaded through different sources. I just run that script, and that script automatically moves all the file based on some pattern recognition to respective folders that I have kept inside the downloads folder. So that is, say, one implementation that is, say, a problem that I solved, because I could solve that thing manually, but it's, if I can code, if I can program or run a script that takes care of it, I would run it periodically and it will automatically clear up my downloads folder. So that is, say, one another example of how I implement the knowledge of programming into solving some sort of a problem. And in most of the cases, most of the time, I'll be developing applications for my client who need to solve some sort of a problem, and I just provide my expertise to them to solve their problems or help them build the applications that they want to build, which will eventually solve certain kind of problems. So I think that is how things will go. And of course, this is a very broad topic to counter, so I hope I gave you decent piece of information to start out. I'll be putting some links in the description below where you can find further more resources to start out, and I'll be linking some of the content creators on YouTube who provide crash courses or beginner friendly courses on many different languages, stacks. And also, while following the tutorials, please try to check the date. The industry moves relatively fast these days, and I would recommend you to watch more latest tutorials, say something from 2000 2020, rather than watching something that is from 2018, something from 2022 if possible, than something from 2020. Hopefully that helps you to understand the latest thing, or the latest features and everything that is there. If you want to start with front end, I would suggest to learn JavaScript, HTML, CSS, and then slowly take your step towards learning React, which is a framework that I have been using for over five years now, and has been immensely helpful to pay my bills. And I built some decent amount of applications using that particular framework. And there's of course a lot to learn. It won't be easy for sure. There will be times where you will not understand why something is done in some particular way, and sometimes there will be, you think you know or you understand what you wrote in the code, but it does not behave or it does not work as you expect. My suggestion would be to take your time, give it some time, sleep on it, and come back to that problem or to that piece of code next day, and it will work like a charm. And that's pretty common in development industry, because it's a pretty challenging thing when you are doing this on a regular basis. And for me, one of the challenges that I face is I don't seem to remember every feature that is there in the language. I use some on a need basis, and say a week from now I forget what that is. I forget the difference between slice and splice. Those are two built-in functions provided by JavaScript. I always search JavaScript slice MDN and JavaScript splice MDN, and I read the docs, and then I'd be like, oh, so this does this thing and this does this thing. Maybe that's one of the areas that I would like to improve in my own skill set, and try to pay more attention to the functions or things that I use on a regular basis. There are just so many things that you cannot keep track of and you do have to search on the documents section of MDN or in Google, or you have to resort to Stack Overflow every once in a while. But that is how development or programming takes place. And everyone works in a team, everyone is assigned their own area of expertise or their own area of the sector in which they are supposed to work, and everyone works in their own sector trying to build one complete application and start out with one area. If you are serious about entering into this industry, say front end or back end or Android or iOS or C or C sharp or hardware programming, do research a bit on the scope of job opportunities around you, or these days you can also go to many job boards and see if companies are hiring for remote positions on such categories. I can vouch for web development, for front end, for back end, and even for full stack. There are plenty of jobs, and even for mobile development, there are plenty of jobs online. And if you want to work as a contractor, as a freelancer on a short-term basis on different projects, you can make your profiles on sites such as Upwork, Fiverr, freelancer.in, and be cautious about the fact that there does happen to be a race to a bottom kind of a thing. So again, that's a lot for the scope of this video, because that is there is a lot of a difference between starting out and going on a freelancing site and offering your services. It's a very long distance, but it's not impossible if you put in a decent amount of work regularly in learning programming. 3 months from now or 6 months from now on, maybe you can be at a position where you can offer some basic services to a company or to a project, or you can even build your own things. And it just depends. Everyone's intellectual level or everyone's level of understanding differs. Some people are quick to understand things, they understand patterns more easily, and for some people like us, it takes time to understand what's going on. And I think it's most common for a lot of people to really take time. They do take their time to understand what's going on, and once you understand it, you just understand it forever. It doesn't go away. I think this still doesn't fully answer all the nuances that is there in the world of development, in the world of programming. There are some books that you might want to buy and have it on your shelf or on your iPad or anything, or even in your desktop or in your computer, and refer to them every once in a while. So say if you're learning a JavaScript, just search for best JavaScript books and buy a couple of them, and try to follow them along with the internet-based resources such as videos or tutorials, because books will provide more theoretical knowledge that will last you for a really long time. I've been reading some of the books such as Clean Code and Clean Architecture lately more and more. I find, because there are some resources that you would not find easily on the internet, and I think reading books is also a good way to broaden your horizon of knowledge in these kind of cases. And good luck, keep persisting in your endeavor, and hopefully you will get to a place where you want to be.